be sharing my study about Pa'akai overload, potential consequences of overmixing brackish water ecosystems in Kyoka, Hawaii. An ecosystem that has been my playground my entire life. So on the east side of Mokuokeawe, Hawaii Island, we have a very special and valuable resource that is critical to our coastline. It is known as the brackish water habitat. Brackish water is a unique aquatic ecosystem occurring in the near shore zones, where upwelling groundwater comes up at the near shore coastline as springs and meets with the ocean water and creates this really unique ecosystem that is provided for a sustainable practice in Hawaii known as the loko'i'a, the fish pond, Hawaiian fish pond practice. And so sea level rise as a result of climate change has been a potential threat to these ecosystems. And so as a fish pond practitioner, aquaculture major, I study the impacts of these systems and also restore them at the same time. So this photo here shows a visual of the seawater and the groundwater mixture. If you can see on that end, there is the freshwater pond, groundwater, and then seawater influence, and they actually mix together, creating this really unique ecosystem that is limited to a certain amount of species. This is actually the brackish water ecosystem directly across the street from my long life home. So the brackish water systems have facilitated foraging traditions of Hawaiian communities, especially in relation to loko'i'a practices. Mo'olelo are the stories that have been passed down for generations, giving perspective on the potential health of the environment, are the primary source of learning about a particular place. These studies provide practical knowledge, insight, and motivation that is the foundation of our cultural significance and its role in the environment. So the development of loko'i'a, traditional fish ponds or natural coastline aquaculture dates back over half a millennium ago, and still thrives today. Provides food for local communities, large local communities, serves as a nursery for the nearshore species. Hawaiian communities utilize loko'i'a as a natural refrigerator where fish are raised, harvested, and consumed, and replenishes the coastline directly outside of that habitat. Loko'i'a also promotes the continued interaction with and understanding of brackish water ecosystem ecology. So the photos here show some activities that we do as fish pond practitioners, building fish shelters, gathering food from the nearshore coastline, and rebuilding traditional structures for the fish pond, and also making sure we utilize modern techniques that we have today and traditional practices, and kind of bridging them together to figure out the best way to adapt to the conditions of the changes of today. Yeah? So the brackish water habitat in the system is very limited with diversity due to the saltwater and freshwater mixture. So certain species, only certain species can adapt to these conditions. These key brackish water species for the Kyoka community where I live some include O'opua kupa, which is a common endemic fish, a bottom dweller, and a poor continuous swimmer, and tends to be an ambush predator. So that's why they can't really live out in the marine area, because they're too slow swimmers. So they're restricted to this brackish water ecosystem. Next is the aholehole, and another endemic fish directly related to the O'opua kupa. They actually eat the fry, the juvenile kupa, And they're found in very large schools within these brackish water ecosystems as juveniles. And so because they come in such huge schools, those are the ones that we like to capture in these fish ponds because they provide a lot of food for the communities. And then last we have the Opai oiha'a, which is known as our brackish water shrimp. They feed on plant matter and microscopic algae, require fresh water or groundwater flow to release their eggs. And their salinity tolerances is limited to 17.5 to 35 parts per thousand. So you can see how sea level rise may impact these certain species. And as a critical transition zone, these ecosystems and their biodiversity are highly sensitive to the changes in the processes that create and sustain them. So with that being said, there are a number of ways in which sea level rise could negatively impact brackish water ecosystems, especially because Hawaii is projected to be one of the most vulnerable places to experience the changes in sea level rise. For instance, sea level rise in relation to the island mass is faster in the Hilo region than any other in Hawaii, with an increase of approximately 1.5 millimeters per year over the past century. Sea level rise has been linked to thermal expansion in the oceans, increased melting of melting glaciers, and subject to melting of Greenland ice sheets. Estimates of sea level rise over the last 100 years have been 1.0 to 2.0 millimeters per year. The Keauka'a coastline in the district of Hilo has numerous small pocket beaches separated from the sea by natural lava flows and considered to be a low coastal slope. Low-lying coastal plains such as Hawaii are susceptible to a range of threats in result of negative impacts of sea level rise. Sea level rise causes saltwater intrusion of freshwater ground supplies. And the diagram above shows the relationship between the groundwater and seawater, and also shows how the rising sea could pose a threat to the ecosystem by too much saltwater intrusion. How can we help, or what can we do? The brackish water ecosystem has facilitated generations of Kanaka Maoli, Hawaiian people, ecological knowledge that has provided the people with a sustainable food source, a valuable as well as a practical learning environment. There is a critical need for further research in adapting to the overall demands of our brackish water ecosystems. There are efforts as Kanaka, indigenous people, Ohana family, and Alahui community that can be implemented to protect these habitats. These efforts include academic and cultural research collaboration, coastal monitoring, watershed and fish pond restoration efforts, and public awareness, of course. In summary, studies suggest that climate change will alter the shoreline in Hilo, Hawaii due to its low-lying coastal landscape. In this case, sea level rise will have a negative impact on brackish water ecosystems through saltwater intrusion along the Keauka'a coastline. The implications of this issue involves the potential loss of a unique ecosystem and threatens the livelihood of Kanaka Maoli. Restoration of Hawaiian fish ponds is a leading practice in adapting to further ecological damages. Without the perpetuation of local i'a methods and traditions in brackish water ecosystems of Keauka'a, I will not be able to share the importance of this ecosystem and how it has supported my family in some way or another. Storytelling and the engagement with the practices of fish pond maintenance, in this case, plays the largest role in sustaining the ecosystem. The biggest mahalo to my mentor, Jason Adolph, the Haskell Environmental Research Study Institute, HERS, EPSCOR, the National Science Foundation, Kansas University, KU IGERT trainees, Haskell Indian Nations University, Keahuloa STEM, and the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Most of all, I would like to acknowledge all of those individuals who play a role in making the HERS Institute possible, because without them, I would not be here today.